I'm Nicholas Pleece. I'm Associate Dean for Research and Impact at the School for Business and Society. I am not going to talk very much because we need to make up the time in this session. But what I'm going to do is just quickly introduce our panel of speakers. I won't introduce Bob because you've already met Bob. But I'm delighted to introduce Katie, who's Head of Responsible Business at TSB, Jenny, who I've been working with for some time, who's CEO at the Good Business Charter, and also Jack, who's Social Impact and Sustainability Manager for Aviva. Bob, you've spearheaded several high-profile innovative projects, including Fix Our Food, while at the same time serving as the founding dean for the School for Business and Society. I'd like you to talk a bit about what's inspired you to follow this path and how you define responsible business.
I guess my inspirations really come initially from my grandparents. So my grandparents on my father's side were miners and cotton mill workers who were very, very strong union representatives in Burnley. And on the other side, my mother's side, she was a farmer's daughter. So my granddad was a farmer, very, very good business person, but my interest in fairness and also in responsible business is a kind of a hybrid between the views of both my grandparents. And that's what I've always done. I've always worked originally before entering academia in the fair trade sector, establishing Divine Chocolate, being a campaigner for Oxfam. So my definition of responsible business has to be that they have to have a positive social and environmental impact on communities. You know, James talked about thriving communities, thriving healthy communities, and I'm a great believer in that. And business is integrated with society. It's not separate. Some economists would like to see business separate from society, you know, externalizing its costs, you know, extracting from the natural environment and from people. But actually, that's not going to work long term. We have to be integrated. Businesses have to be integrated with society. So fairness has always been part of my DNA, and tackling complex societal challenges. That's why I'm so glad I'm the founder of the School for Business and Society, because we're the only academic school in the United Kingdom called the School for Business and Society. The only one. You know, our competitors are Warwick Business School, Manchester Business School. They take a very, very different approach to business. And so we're very unique in that respect. And that's what really drives me on.
So the next question for Katie. So Katie, you're the head of responsible business in one of the leading retail banks in the UK. So I'd just like to ask you, what's your perspective on responsible business?
Yeah, so just a quick, so TSB, we're a medium-sized retail bank, and what that means is we serve around about 5 million customers in England, Wales and Scotland, and we're pretty much straightforward. You know, we attract savings, and then we use that savings to help ordinary people kind of buy their homes or to go about their lives. We are rooted in social good, so we have a heritage that goes back to 1810 when the Reverend Henry Duncan was the founder of the savings bank movement. And what that basically means is that he enabled everyday people to access banking services in a time where it was only for the very wealthy or the elite. If you fast forward that to today, responsible business at TSB is really about how we deliver our social initiatives alongside our environmental initiatives, but also maintaining kind of the essentials of responsible business. We kind of came about responsible business slightly by accident, and I think that does happen in businesses from time to time. So in 2019, I picked up a role that was sitting in a corporate affairs function, which was all about building reputation for the business. But I was challenged with very few resources, so I had to really take a close, hard look at the things that I really wanted to concentrate on. So I commissioned some research to understand what our customers and our stakeholders and our colleagues thought about what we already did, what they thought about other businesses that they would actually recommend and would advocate for. And what came back at me, unsurprisingly, was that you have to do good things in your community, but you also need to make sure you're paying your taxes and being a good corporate citizen. You have to look after your people, give them a fair wage, fair hours, and so on. You need to do right by the planet, but you also need to play your part in the supply chain. And it was a real aha moment for me, because I was able to look across the business and say, well, we already do some of that stuff, but some of it sits in HR, some of it sits over there, some of it sits over there. But there was a gap. We weren't great on environmental stuff. And so what I did is I created a narrative to hang this from, something called the Do What Matters plan, which is really our responsible business strategy. If you fast forward to today, that responsible business strategy is focused on delivering 8 goals around people and planet that collectively drive social and financial inclusion, promote fair business practice, and support a just transition to a greener planet. And that's simply what we do. One final thing on responsible business. The positive thing about once you start on a responsible business journey is that it's very difficult for people to wriggle out of. So there are many conversations that I have with very senior people where there are priority calls being made. Oh, should we be doing that? Yeah, absolutely we should, because I persuaded you to make a commitment. And if you go back on the commitment in today's environment, that isn't a good thing to do from a reputational perspective. So I'm unashamedly holding my business to account and using our commitments to do good.
So, Jenny, you launched the Good Business Charter. We've had the Good Business Charter explained to us a couple of times, so we won't go into too much detail now. But could you please share your insights into what motivated you to pursue the path of working for GBC, and how is responsible business reflected and promoted by the GBC framework?
Yes, of course. Thank you for all those who've already explained what the Good Business Charter is. We have bookmarks you can pick up and take away, which also set out our 10. My background, I'm an auditor by trade, but my background has always been in charities, and spent some time overseas where I saw poverty sort of overseas, what that looks like. And of course, then the impact that we have here of UK businesses, ethical sourcing, if they're not thinking about that, the kind of child labour in Guatemala was where I lived, and there are companies today still using child labour in countries like Guatemala. But when I came back to Britain, I realised the sort of poverty that exists here, and had the good fortune of meeting Julian when he set up a charity that was helping people in UK poverty who can't buy essential items like a washing machine, like a bus fare, like school uniform, and just really understanding the flip side, the people at the end of low-paid, insecure work. And so when Julian started to talk to me about the Good Business Charter, it was really seeing particularly the focus on that if all companies in this country were treating their people properly, where they were really caring for them, they were paying them right, they were giving them secure work that they could actually budget on. There are obviously other wider issues like housing challenges, but actually it would make a big impact. And I think we're all seeing some of the issues with inequality and how that's widening. So what's drawn me in particular is that side of things, both the people in the UK and people down the ethical sourcing chain. But actually that's why the Good Business Charter, I think we would say that essentially it's about doing to others what you would have do to you. You want to be paid on time, you want to be treated fairly, you want to be cared for, and why do we then not do that for others? So I think that's been our mantra. And so therefore, even with the environment, when we approach the environment, we talk about future generations. It's about having that framework that we are caring for our generations for the future, but also looking after people today and kind of using that framework. And as I've worked for the Good Business Charter over the last few years, there hasn't really been anyone who said, you've totally forgotten this area. It was 10 that were put together. There are things you can expand on, certainly within the tax. You could widen that more around society, but it does feel like a framework that's captured the key fundamentals.
So in your role as a social impact and sustainability manager for Aviva, how do you observe responsible and ethical business practices being implemented? And if you could give us a couple of examples, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. So first of all, I think when we talk about responsible business, it's not a new thing and especially not for Aviva. We've been doing it for 300 odd years, and it's really part of the fabric of how we operate as an organisation. If insurance at its core, if you're struggling with your health, if you get into a car accident, Aviva's there to look after you, and that's what core responsible business is for us. Is looking after both people internally, but externally as well to our customers. And about a third of the UK is Aviva customer, so we have an obligation there to support people. But then also standing up in our community. So if I take the part, retaining your staff and making sure they're happy workforce is a win-win, because ultimately we have 25,000 people that work for Aviva in the UK nationally. If they're happy and motivated to come to work, then that means that they will do good work, right? And but that's also in our interest, because we're looking after our people. And we do that really, really well. I'm obviously biased at Aviva because I work there, but I've only been here for a year, so I can go on a bit more objectivity. But people really work at Aviva for a long time. Lots of people that I'm sitting next to the office is about 20, 25 years that they've been here. And that's because of the things that we implement internally. So a couple of examples, we have 35 hours of carer leave. So if you've got a caring responsibility, you can take that as paid. We have other things like volunteering leave. But then I think when we're talking about the core principles, being a living wage employer, really crucial, and we're really key part of that. But we've just launched something called the living pension as well, where it's kind of putting a minimum of 12% into your pension pot. That is kind of allowing you to retire comfortably for your future. And then if we think about the external part, so how we're standing up in our community, we've got kind of the large-scale investment piece. So we've got about 10 billion since October 2020 into kind of UK infrastructure and housing, which is how we're standing up in the UK and making sure that we're developing it. But then also from kind of a local community point of view as well. So a really good example is the work that we're doing with the university actually with Place, which is a place in Chapel Fields or Westfield, however you want to define that area, which is a local community centre, and we're developing an employability programme for young people from that area. Young people from there don't even identify themselves as part of York. They call them from Chapel Fields. They don't look outwards. And so their kind of life chances are really, we've got generational of unemployment in that area. So, that cycle deprivation just goes on and on. So we're thinking about, okay, that is right on our doorstep, and people coming to work at Aviva don't even know that's happening. So if that's right on our doorstep, we need to make sure that that's not the case, and how can we improve the life chances of those people that we're serving locally as well. So it's that mixture of, the large scale to the local community and that internal and external as well. Yeah.
We've had the kind of opening questions, now we're getting into the more difficult stuff, which is what are the challenges for your organisations around delivering a responsible business model, and how do you overcome those challenges? And in thinking about that, I'm thinking about evidence that some corporations, some big businesses are backing away from ESG. We've obviously got particular issues around the political landscape, North America and Europe, and how that's changing. I wondered if you had any thoughts about the future of responsible business in that kind of context.
Should I start? Yeah. For us in Aviva, I think the challenge is to be truly needs-led. So rather than being someone at an organisation that goes, I think X is really important, and then I have a bit of money to play with, I'm going to give this to an organisation, and then they either leave or the organisation's priorities change, and then before you know it, over a 10 or 15 year period, you've had 3 years added onto each other of various bits and bobs that you've kind of done a patchwork quilt that's actually made not any long-term transformative change or impact. And so I think what a challenge is, and what we're trying to do and overcome that challenge, is thinking about, okay, what is the evidence base? You know, York and will have a really different need to somewhere like Leeds or Manchester or places in London. The evidence base is different. The people are different, right? So you have to think about, okay, what is the need in the location? What is the evidence? What does the data say? And then you do your activity on the basis of that in collaboration with other organisations. And that's what we're trying to do. So we partnered with an organisation called Business in the Community to do this, to stand up this kind of place-based model. And this is what place means to us, to do kind of needs-led community impact and community investment. We've got ambition to them to get to 50 places by 2032, and York is one of them for us. And we're on about 13 or 14, I can't remember. So we've got a long way to go. But it's looking at, I think, a challenge in responsible business is being that needs-led, but also then it's also that opportunity as well. Because if you are truly needs-led, then your activity is kind of unequivocal, right? You're doing it because you can't really argue that we should be doing employability stuff in York, because the disparity of outcome and dependent award is massive, right? If you're in from a certain area in York, your life chances are really different. If you're in Chapel Fields, you have to, and you're post-16, you have to go outside of Chapel Fields to go to post-16 college, right? So how we can increase employability in York is a really key thing. No one can argue with that because it's data-driven. So I think that is really important, but it's a challenge because convincing people that's the way to go internally is tough sometimes, but it's also a really good opportunity.
So I'm representing smaller businesses today. We're a charity of 6, and I think for small businesses, when you look at the challenges of responsible business, it is most small businesses set up particularly with the entrepreneur work we've done with Sam, and entrepreneurs set up wanting to be responsible. As they grow a bit, they keep being responsible. Often the things that then cause them trouble are the fact that not everyone in their ecosystem is being responsible. So, for example, they want to pay promptly, but they are not being paid promptly by big companies, and that's therefore putting them in a really difficult situation. They come to us and say, we want to accredit, but we can't always pay promptly, but it's because of this, and that feels very unfair for them. And I think another area is perhaps when they're looking at their sourcing, but small businesses don't have the kind of buying power, purchasing power that they can really demand their suppliers to change. So it's really good news for small businesses in York to be part of a city that's really championing, and hopefully a whole region, as we heard, that's going to champion good business practices, because that helps the small businesses, because they're doing what they can. And we've partnered with the Federation of Small Businesses because they are behind what we're doing as well, because small businesses really care about this. But the challenges are often coming from external factors, I would say.
Thank you. So for TSB, we're a little bit kind of later on our journey than Aviva. So I think the real challenge we face is around embedding responsible business. So, I mean, I've got a job and I've got a team, so you could kind of say the business has made some commitment, they've put something out externally. But when you really scratch, and I mean really, really scratch below the surface, there are still people in my organisation, quite influential people in my organisation, who deny that we need to do it or will argue about a target. So for me, what I think comes down from that is a level of competence and understanding, and then confidence to take action. So when you look at a typical kind of big business, it's run by people who've been in business for quite a long time. And I'm not saying that all people who've been in business for a long time, have kind of fixed views, but, the world is changing at quite a scary pace, and there are other things that are coming, whether it's AI or whatever. These things are really kind of challenging the mindsets of our boards and our executive teams. So for me, that's a real and present challenge that I'm facing into. One way of getting around that is to bring as many external voices in to kind of hold the mirror up to your business. So since the beginning of this year, I've had an advisory board. So this is a panel of external experts, one from academia, one from kind of very pragmatic, deliverable sustainability activities, and another that's really focused on financial inclusion, which is very relevant, obviously, to us in banking. And, you know, we've had 4 or 5 sessions so far, and the difference that I get from, you know, some of those that I would call deniers, probably not to their faces, but, you know, some of those people have just been sitting and having a longer conversation that's really focused has helped to kind of shift the dial. So that's the reality for me.
So I'm a head of an academic department, so an academic school, deliver social and environmental change. You may have seen this example on BBC News last Tuesday on BBC Breakfast, but I work on food systems, and I've been doing, my team, some of them are here, I've been doing a lot of work on school food, and we've been piloting an action-orientated intervention around free school meals. So we actually discovered that about 470,000 families in the UK are eligible for free school meals. Remember, the threshold's only £7,400 in terms of combined income, eligible for free school meals, but actually weren't applying for free school meals. For whatever reason, they were eligible, but they weren't applying. So we've done what's called auto-enrollment. We brought 2 databases together. We navigated GDPR problems. We brought the universal credit database together with council tax relief. And basically, we auto-enroll. We've been working with 60 local authorities now, and we've auto-enrolled 20,000 children to get a free school meal for the first time. And that's what research can have that impact if it's action-orientated.
So we've talked about challenges. What about opportunities? What do you see based on your practice and observation in responsible business and also responsible research in terms of what the university does that can lead to sustainable development, to sustainable activity? Where do you think the opportunities are? Are there spaces we've not explored yet in terms of responsible business and activity?
When we established Divine Chocolate, which is a fair trade pioneer, we didn't establish it to sell loads of chocolate. We established it to solve some of the problems Jenny was talking about in supply chains. You know, child labour is a real problem in cocoa, and so is exploitation in terms of price, and you've seen that more recently as well. So we didn't join. We didn't. You know, I never really had the motivation to sell loads of chocolate. I just wanted to develop a business model that did good, that changed the market. So when we set up Divine Chocolate in 1998, and we did it with a big event in the Great Show Club in London, and Ben Elton was our keynote speaker, at that time, only 0.1% of the UK chocolate market was certified cocoa. So there was a bit from Divine Chocolate, a bit from Green and Blacks, and the rest of it didn't even acknowledge on the product label where cocoa came from. Didn't even say sourced from Ghana or the Ivory Coast or whatever. Fast forward to 2007, 40% of the UK chocolate market was certified. So Divine Chocolate shined a light on the problem. And we were very good at advocacy and policy impact. So we did a lot of advocacy work. We worked with campaign groups around cocoa. We worked in Parliament. We worked all the way with activist York, which is a fair trade city. We worked very, very closely with the fair trade group in York. And basically, we changed the market. You know, we changed the market, you know, within a, you know, a 10-year period. And that's what business can do. It's got to find a problem, though. You know, finding a problem, finding something to solve. And there's lots of problems out there that I think that business can solve. And there are great examples. I work in the food system. There's some great examples in Yorkshire and beyond about companies, you know, changing the way that markets work, changing the way that farming works. There's so many opportunities.
In 2018, we had a fairly challenging time where we did an IT migration that went catastrophically wrong for our customers. Now, I'm pleased to say we're kind of recovered, but, the impact of that, something awful, something really good came out of it. And the thing that was good that came out of it is when you've created instability and uncertainty for your customers around their money, the fraudsters start to circle around and they start to say, well, everybody's feeling a bit insecure if they're a TSB customer. Let's see if we can persuade them to send their life savings to us. And, true to form, 3 weeks after the migration event had failed, we saw significant amounts of fraud on our customers' account. Now, there was a whole load of debate going on about, should we be asking our customers to evidence and prove that, that they've not given their PIN numbers or sent the money. And ultimately, we made the call that, we're the ones that have created this mess. We've created this uncertainty. We need to own it. And actually, we're just going to give customers the money back. Now, it's a very brave thing to do in business to say, we'll just give the customers the money back. But what we found from doing that was, firstly, it helped our customers. Secondly, it actually cost us less, weirdly, to give the money back than to do the long, convoluted chasing down of evidencing everything. But it also gave us an opportunity to campaign and to, pick up with policymakers to say, we can do this, we can make ends meet with it. Other businesses and other banks can do the same. And on the 7th of October this year, legislation came in that meant that every UK bank, if you are a victim of push payment fraud, you're entitled to your money back. Now, there are some limitations to that. I mean, we've argued that you should have more, but it's definitely a step forward. So it just shows you, out of adversity, if you've got the right mindset, you can create something that's really good and impactful.
Thanks. It's really exciting to hear all that Fair Trade really achieved in a relatively short space of time. We have similar huge ambitions for the GBC. Ultimately, the Good Business Charter isn't about here's a small group of niche businesses who are the good guys. It's about making that the benchmark, the entry point to do business in the UK, so that we get to a point where if you can't do these 10, you shouldn't be doing business here at all. That may seem a long way to go, but actually, obviously now with the current government, there's a lot of plans in place. The Procurement Act, looking at how we can, wouldn't it be great if government were only procuring to responsible businesses? Wouldn't it be great if tax credits were only going to the responsible businesses that are already paying their tax? They're fairly basic asks. And so really it's about that opportunity to get lots and lots of momentum behind certain places, certain communities, key businesses. You've got a third of the customers have got some contact with Aviva. There's actually, as we pull things together, we know this is what customers want. We know this is what workers want, especially younger workers as they come in. They really care about what their employer thinks about ESG, about environmental and social and governance issues. And so I think there's a lot of opportunities also, of course, in the investment space. That is one where, again, if we can look at moving away from this language of woke and just being a responsible business, doing the right things, and then asking investors to then be investing in those responsible businesses, you can, there's that real opportunity to drive all business behaviour up. We're already seeing it with individual businesses who are doing 7 or 8 of our 10 and are actually changing behaviour to accredit with us. That's what we want. That's what we want to see happening, and that's where the opportunity lies.
I think for us, opportunity is the key opportunity is collaboration. So what a lot of responsible business teams at large business or even medium-sized small businesses, they'll create a responsible business strategy or whatever, it's sustainability strategy, and it all looks good on a piece of paper. We're going to do X, Y, and Z, and we're going to support this organization and do this project, and it's all going to be great in 5-10 years' time. And the problem is that they all do it alone. And so each big business will, or any business, will all have their own individual projects and plans and things, and it doesn't really fit together. The puzzle pieces don't make an overall community better. And so what happens is that in some areas it's really great, and then in others it gets neglected. And so what is an opportunity for responsible business and future responsible business practices is organizations to come together and say, we're all pretty much singing from the same hymn sheet here. We all want development for local communities or sustainable futures. for the places that we operate. Let's work together to come up with an agenda for the place, but not just businesses, but how can we bring in combined authorities, councils, voluntary sector to kind of convene at that sweet point in the middle, because our collective power together can make a bigger difference. And, we're trying to do that. We've got something called the Pride of Place Board in York, and Kieran chairs it, and we're doing that with the university to bring together all these kind of different members of and organisations in the city, so that we are doing joined up collaborative action that is going to make bigger difference for communities that need it most, rather than just all us doing it individually.
If we could have anybody who's got any questions.
Hello, I'm Rose. I've no experience of business, but I just want to give you an example that happened today. I travel frequently between Amsterdam and York, and because of my principles, I take the train. I bought a ticket today. I was a bit shocked at the price, and the extremely helpful lady at York Ticket Office said, "Oh, wouldn't you be better flying?" And what I'm trying to say is there must be lobbyists for the flying industry. This is just an example, who somehow are managing to make flying cheaper than traveling by train, which, of course, is better for the environment. So how do you deal with lobbyists?
Hi everyone, thanks. My name's Sam Gardner, I'm Director of Enterprise Works at the University of York. I want to ask the panel a question about the role of procurement in all of this activity. There's an enormous opportunity here for both small businesses to benefit from supply chains, and in our case we're particularly interested around supporting social enterprises in supply chains, but also for businesses to do a tremendous amount of good through that supply chain and through that procurement process. I'd be really interested to hear how we can do that better collectively.
Hello, my name's Barbara Saunders. I'm involved in the communications industry. I think what we're hearing altogether, if you join everything up, is a movement. But I was very interested in what Kate said, that some of the input has to come from external influences. And so my view is, what are you doing to make consumers aware and to start consumers asking for businesses to do good?
A number of people today have mentioned campaigning and advocacy. I think you can combat the kind of private sector lobbying, which does take place, took place a lot over the previous government. You can do it by good campaigning and good advocacy work. There's so many examples of that within housing, within the area I work in, food. I'm not a transport expert, so. But I think that's one way of dealing with it. In terms of procurement, I completely agree. We in the research program I work in, which is called Fix Our Food, we've been doing a lot of work on public food procurement and trying to also work with our university caterers to change the way that they procure. So we set up a supplier hub of sustainable farmers and sustainable food businesses that provide different categories, and now our catering team are procuring through them. It's a trial, it's a pilot, so I'm hoping that will work. In terms of, what was the other question, sorry? Oh yeah, consumers, fantastic question. When I was at Divine Chocolate, we did an enormous amount of work in getting our product stocked in retailers. That was difficult, and you only could do it by mobilizing campaigners to go to the supermarket, write letters to Tesco's and Sainsbury's, say, will you stock Divine Chocolate? And we did that through very, very effective campaign groups like Oxfam, Christian Aid, CAFOD, Women's Institute. You've got to collaborate with organisations to do it. Thank you.
Okay, so again, nothing to do with trains, I think. But I think I think my previous point around lobbying and campaigning is it's a real force for good. We've got examples not only in the fraud space, but we've done a lot of work in domestic abuse and really driving that agenda because of the link to financial abuse. In terms of the supply chain, so for TSB, whilst we're a fairly biggish sized organization, interestingly, our number of suppliers is quite small. And we spend the majority of our money with very big providers, the BTs and the Microsoft, those kind of people. And so actually we find that we piggyback off them. So we're learning from our big suppliers. Now, we pay that forward with our smaller suppliers, and specifically how we do that is around focusing our procurement processes around prompt payment. So we have a laser-like focus on our smaller businesses. We aim to pay small businesses within 10 days. We've had a bit of a hit, actually, interestingly, this year because we've had some changes in personnel. But testament to the Good Business Charter, we've all sat there and gone, we're at risk here if we don't do something, and everybody's pulled their socks up. So it's looking much more positive. In terms of helping customers, right? This is a real challenge for us, I think. An area that we are really grappling with at the moment is around how we drive changes in the housing market in terms of sustainability of UK homes. So 99% of our carbon emissions from TSB are in the homes that we lend money for our customers to buy. Right, so not many customers think that it's any of our business why they're, whether they've got a heat source pump or the emissions that are coming out of their homes, and so the tactic that we're deploying with that is very much around raising awareness, because you have to raise that awareness before, and then coming up with a proposition that supports that awareness, and then really driving that. But it requires not just TSB; it requires the media to be talking about it, your next door neighbour to be doing something to really shift it. So I think it's a collaboration point to really drive that awareness.
For us, the consumer piece is huge. That's really where we started looking at retail, and that's probably the one where you've got the most extreme situation where a lot of consumers want to buy from responsible retailers, responsible supermarkets. The reality is they are very hard pressed on finance, and therefore, even though they know this shop down the road is going to be a better business, it is possibly double the price of the terrible business that they know about and they've read about, but it's cheaper, and that is a massive challenge. That said, we're working with Which, working with the ethical consumer. It is about collaborating with those different groups to try and raise awareness and keep driving that message, and hope that over time that demand on consumers does get less, or more importantly, we push those businesses that are behaving badly to sort themselves out so that we can get there. But that is a very real challenge. When we've talked to businesses, we've tended to focus more on your workforce, because big businesses are struggling to retain and recruit good workers, because we know that the consumer one is just a struggle because of the challenges on them. In terms of procurement, I'd just say that is certainly an area. Again, we would love to have we'd love a supermarket to be accredited with the Good Business Charter, and then work with them in detail to go down their supply chain, look at how we can drive procurement, continue talking to the council here. How can City of York Council favour the responsible businesses through their procurement, and obviously feeding into the debate at the top as well with national government to look at how we can drive procurement, because that would make a real impact.
Okay, 3 great questions. I think starting with the lobbying one, I think it's always going to be the case where you have forces for that will be in opposition to responsible business practices. There's a whole host of people that will still advocate for shareholder primacy. They will still advocate for practices that go against everything that we're saying today. I think all we can do as a responsible business and organisation is advocate for positive change and prove that impact. Beyond just being kind of altruistic and the right thing to do, but actually proving that it makes really good business sense as well. the 3 Ps or people, planet, profit, they're actually intertwined and support each other. And if you don't focus on all 3 in tandem and only focus on one, then the other 2 will then inevitably decline. So that's a really important point. Next is supply chain. Thanks for the question, Sam. I think it's difficult from an Aviva perspective, I think, because we're beholden to large scale kind of national contracts, and then getting that kind of local supply chain point is difficult, but not impossible. And I think it's really important because ultimately there's lots of evidence if you support local and organisation supply chain, it builds community wealth really quickly and really brilliantly. So that's a question and a task that I'm definitely taking internally, but it's supply chain more generally. I think it's, again, looking at the good business charters, advocating that your suppliers have to be aligned to the values that you, as yourself as an organisation, a good example is Aviva. All our suppliers have to adhere to science-based targets for the sustainability, right? So if they don't do that, then there's a period of time that eventually they won't be a supplier of Aviva. We're forcing change through what we're saying that our suppliers have to meet kind of the standards. And then the final one, the consumer, I think, again, from a Aviva perspective, super important. Our slogan is with you today for a better tomorrow. And it might sound a little bit corny, but it's actually really kind of important and integrated into everything that we do. The consumer informs our practices, so we make sure that we have a huge amount of data-driven, consumer-informed practices. What I mean by that is that we often go out to kind of doing surveys and things like that to get an impression of how we operate in the community, but also what our customers want us to do in the future, and that informs our strategy as well. So that's super important. And not just considering that we're doing stuff to people and to our consumers, but we're doing them in collaboration and with. So they're a really important and key stakeholder. Yeah.
So I think if I was going to take a message from this first panel, it's about the possibility of change and how change can happen. I mean, the question about the trains, yes, the forces that are ranged against responsible business, against ethical business, sustainable business are very considerable. I mean, living in York, one of our main products in this city is history. I mean, I think there are important lessons from history. Look at the vast mercantile interests that were behind slavery, behind big tobacco. One's gone, one's in serious retreat. And look what's starting to happen around fossil fuel and renewables. The UK has just closed its last coal-powered power station. So change is possible. We've heard a lot today about how that can be delivered on a practical level. I'd like to thank the panellists very, very much, and please give them a round of applause.